Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a really big one, a concept that, well, it sparks a lot of worry, a lot of curiosity too. World War III.
Yeah, and let's just state this up front really clearly. As of right now, World War III has not happened.
Right.
There's no official record, no confirmation. It's still hypothetical.
That clarification is so important, and that's really our goal here today with this deep dive into World War III, scenarios, and geopolitical risks. We want to unpack how this idea gets explored.
In fiction, yeah, but also in serious political theory, military strategy.
Exactly. The mission is to give you a clear, sort of concise grasp of these hypothetical scenarios
Yeah.
and the real geopolitical risks right now, helping you get up to speed quickly, thoroughly, without it feeling, overwhelming.
hmm So let's get into it. What's really interesting is how the whole idea of a world war has shifted over time.
How so?
Well, during the Cold War, the big fear, the dominant one, was basically a massive nuclear war. U.S. versus Soviet Union, mutually assured destruction, all that.
Right, the classic two-superpower nightmare.
Exactly. And while that nuclear threat hasn't gone away, look at tensions with Russia, China, North Korea, the ways a global conflict could start today, they've really broadened out. The scenarios are much more varied now.
Okay, so if the Cold War fear was mainly nuclear annihilation, what other paths does our source material suggest could potentially spiral into a global conflict now?
So our source points to a few key areas. First, there's still the classic great power conflict.
Like US versus China or NATO versus Russia?
Precisely. And the biggest danger there isn't always like a deliberate decision to go to war. It's often the risk of miscalculation
An accident.
or a small regional fight, say, over Taiwan, or something escalating in Ukraine that suddenly pulls in bigger powers because of defense pacts or economic ties.
So it snowballs.
It snowballs into something much bigger than anyone initially intended. Then you've got the whole dimension of modern warfare itself changing.
You mean like cyber attacks? Our source mentions cyber and AI warfare? That sounds different.
Oh, completely. Imagine huge cyber attacks knocking out a country's power grid.
Or their banks.
Financial networks, communications, even military command and control, all potentially without a single bomb dropping.
Wow.
And the source talks about AI-driven systems maybe coordinating these attacks, making decisions almost instantly.
So you wouldn't even know who exactly launched it or how to respond in a traditional way.
It makes attribution and figuring out a proportional response incredibly complex. Terrifyingly so.
Okay, so we have great power conflict, cyber.
Yeah.
But it doesn't stop there, does it? The source brings up something else pretty unsettling. Resource wars. How does scarcity play into this?
Yeah, that's a big one. It's not just that, say, water or energy is becoming scarcer in places. The source really stresses how this scarcity makes existing political tensions worse.
Like pouring fuel on a fire.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Imagine countries already politically unstable, suddenly facing, I don't know, mass famine because of drought or crippling energy shortages.
Sure, I lash out.
Exactly. Desperate governments might take preemptive military action to grab the resources they need, which then drags in their allies, their rivals,
Yep.
turning an environmental crisis into a full-blown geopolitical one.
That makes these hypotheticals feel much less hypothetical. The source also touches on economic warfare, right? Things like sanctions, trade wars, not direct fighting, but still conflict.
Absolutely. Our source makes it clear that these aren't just, diplomatic tools. They can be used as real weapons.
How so?
Well, they can cripple a nation's economy so badly it can't afford a conventional war or maybe can't even feed its people. It's warfare by other means, essentially.
And then there's the whole disinformation and hybrid warfare angle, using propaganda, cyber stuff, covert ops to mess with a country from the inside.
Right. Undermining trust, creating chaos, weakening institutions without a traditional invasion. Our source really makes you think, if these are the main tools, how would we even define the start of a world war anymore?
It's blurry. And when you map these scenarios onto what's happening now, the risks feel quite real. The Russia-Ukraine war, for example, analysts are constantly worrying about NATO getting directly involved.
The escalation risk is always there.
And other flashpoints the source mentions, like China, Taiwan, you have to wonder, beyond just military moves, what could trigger a serious escalation there? Or in the Middle East, conflicts involving Israel, Iran, their neighbors, they always have that potential to draw in bigger players.
Yeah, they definitely do. So while, again, no actual world war is happening, the source does argue that the risk of major conflict has probably increased. Why? Well, you see expanding military alliances like NATO adding members or a AUKUS.
Australia, UK, US.
Right. And when one side forms alliances, the other side tends to respond, forming counter-alliances. It leads to more global polarization.
And nuclear weapons haven't gone away.
Not at all. You've got North Korea still developing its arsenal and ongoing concerns about Iran's nuclear ambitions.
Right.
That adds another layer of danger.
Looking at the source material, what really strikes me is how tangled up all these risks are now. It's not just one thing, is it? It's cyber economic resources, traditional military power, disinformation, all woven together.
It's incredibly complex.
Yeah.
And that complexity itself can be destabilizing.
So summing up, a full-blown World War III remains this feared scenario, but thankfully it's still unrealized.
Correct. But the source is pretty clear. Global tensions are rising. The possibility of large-scale conflicts, sadly, can't just be dismissed out of hand.
It's a potent reminder that the world situation is, well, very dynamic and requires constant attention.
Which underscores why things like diplomacy, arms control talks, trying to prevent conflicts before they start, why these efforts are so absolutely vital.
They're not just abstract ideas.
No, they're crucial practical work happening constantly, often behind the scenes, trying to steer things away from catastrophe.
So here's something for you, our listener, to think about. When you understand these really complex geopolitical dynamics we've touched on, how does that change how you see the world? Does it help you spot potential trouble spots? Sure, but maybe also appreciate that quiet, constant diplomatic effort that might just be keeping these worst-case scenarios hypothetical. Something to consider. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.